Hey everyone! In this video, I'm going to be talking about impact calc, which is how to weigh advantages and disadvantages against each other. So every advantage and every disadvantage ends in what's called an impact, which is essentially the bad thing that happens. The question is, if both sides win their impact and win that it's true, how do we differentiate between those two impacts? How do we determine which one is more important? There's four main ways to do this. First is magnitude. How big is the impact? Second is probability. This is how likely the impact is. Third is time frame. How fast is that impact? And fourth is whether or not the impact subsumes the other. So does one impact cause the other to happen or vice versa? I'm going to go through these four criteria with a specific example from this year's topic. Two impacts that are going to be really commonly discussed at tournaments are privacy violations and terrorism, right? Because mass surveillance causes privacy violations, but it can also be good to stop terrorist attacks. And this is the debate that goes on in most government debates about whether or not surveillance is justified. So let's start with magnitude. Privacy violations. So if I'm on the privacy side, I could make the argument that privacy violations are a much bigger magnitude than a terrorist attack because these privacy violations will happen every day for millions and millions of Americans. But at the same time, on the negative side, on the other side, I might be able to say, well, yeah, maybe that's true, but what is the ultimate impact of those privacy violations? If the government sprang on my computer, I probably wouldn't even know it. I wouldn't notice. And if I haven't done anything bad, well, I've got nothing to hide. Why do I care? Terrorism, on the other hand, kills people. And, a terrorist attack can kill hundreds, maybe thousands of people. And that is a much bigger impact, even if privacy is more widespread. So you can see how this debate kind of goes back and forth, even within one category. So, second, probability. How likely is this impact to occur? This is a place where I think the privacy side has a pretty big advantage, right? Because privacy violations are an inevitable consequence of mass surveillance. They will always be happening. That's the nature of the game. Whereas terrorist attacks, well, the likelihood that they'll occur is pretty uncertain. They may or may not happen. There haven't been very many terrorist attacks since 9/11. In the United States anyway. And so the probability of any individual attack succeeding is extremely low. On the other hand, though, the terrorism side can say, well, the frequency of attacks is increasing. We've seen them happening in Europe with ISIS on the rise. Now is a unique time where the probability of terrorism is higher than it's been in the past. And that might be a compelling argument to a judge. Third is time frame. So how fast are these impacts going to happen? Well, privacy violations are going to be happening as soon as that program starts. So they're happening now. They're immediate. Terrorism, on the other hand, it's an uncertain time frame. We don't know when it's going to happen. But again, we can debate this out. Perhaps the terrorism side can say, well, these attacks are actually going to happen very quickly. They're imminent. There's recent data that show that terrorist attacks are happening. We have intelligence that says so, and that can possibly play into the debate. I will say, though, I don't think time frame is really the main emphasis of most impact calculus for either of these impacts because, neither of them are super fast. I guess privacy, but that's more systemic rather than just like a one-shot, very fast thing that happens. So last we come to whether one impact subsumes another. On the privacy side, you might be able to make an argument that privacy violations increase the risk of terrorism because mass surveillance can alienate populations against the government and make them more likely to become radicalized or otherwise take up arms against the state. Now, this argument, the logic is pretty shaky, I would say, but people might make this argument, and it's certainly been something people have said before in these public debates. On the terrorism side, an argument you're going to hear a lot is that a successful attack would massively increase the surveillance state, far more than anything we have now. And so it's almost like an argument where we do a little bit of surveillance now to prevent a whole lot more surveillance later, because, for example, after 9/11, when those terrorist attacks happened, people just freaked out and were like, we passed the Patriot Act, we passed tons of legislation that let the government do tons and tons of surveillance, and that's likely to happen again if the public gets freaked out enough. So the argument sort of is that terrorist attacks would actually make privacy impacts worse. So yeah, hopefully that helps you understand the concept of impact calc. This is a very important concept to understand because it will help you win all of your debates. If you do impact calc and you do it well, you'll win a lot.